Imani sat frozen on the sofa in Xu Liang's study, her trembling fingers clinging to the edge of her dress as though the fabric might anchor her against the storm gathering inside her chest. The results lay open on the mahogany desk before her. Clinical, cold, merciless. Father of the child, Xu Liang. Her eyes darted between the words and the man himself. He stood across the room, hands buried in his pockets, jaw tense, eyes dark and unreadable. No, Imani shook her head, her voice cracking. No, this isn't right. Xu Liang's silence was confirmation enough. Her heart dropped to her stomach. You, her voice rose, the words spilling out like venom. You knew all this time? You let me stay here, you let me take care of your son, and you never thought to tell me. Xu Liang finally lifted his gaze, but his expression was as controlled as ever, his face carved from stone. Imani. Don't you dare say my name like that, she snapped, her dark skin flushed with heat, tears burning the corners of her eyes. She stood, pacing the room in sharp, furious strides. I trusted you. I trusted this job, this house, this. She pressed a palm against her rounded stomach, shaking her head in disbelief. And now I find out the man I work for is the father of my baby? How? Why? Xu Liang took a step forward, but she recoiled instantly, as if his nearness might suffocate her. Stay away from me, she hissed, her tone sharper than any blade. For the first time since she met him, Xu Liang looked pained. But he obeyed, pausing mid-step. His lips parted slightly, but no words came. He closed them again, drawing in a slow breath before finally speaking. You weren't supposed to know this way. Her laugh was bitter, humorless. Oh. And how was I supposed to know, Xu Liang? After the baby was born. After your precious secret destroyed me. He said nothing, and that silence was the loudest betrayal of all. In the days that followed, the Mingyue Estate felt colder, emptier. Imani still rose early, still dressed Xiao Rui for school, still tied his shoelaces with trembling fingers while forcing a smile. But the little boy noticed. Children always notice. He pouted one morning as she smoothed his hair. Auntie Imani, why don't you laugh with me anymore? Her throat tightened. She bent down, planting a soft kiss on his forehead. I'm just tired, Rui. But I'll always take care of you. He wrapped his arms around her neck, and guilt slammed into her chest. She couldn't let her anger at Xu Liang steal her tenderness for his son. Yet every time Xu Liang entered the room, her body stiffened. Every glance between them was a war zone, hers filled with fire, his filled with restraint. She avoided him. At meals, she sat as far as possible. In the evenings, she disappeared into the guest wing, slamming the door as though distance could rebuild her shattered trust. But distance did nothing. It only deepened the chasm. It was nearly midnight when Xu Liang finally cornered her. She had just finished checking on Rui and was on her way back to her room when she found him leaning against the corridor wall, waiting. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, revealing strong forearms, his tie discarded. The look in his eyes was weary but determined. We need to talk. His voice was low, roughened by fatigue. She narrowed her eyes. There's nothing to say. Yes, there is. Against her will, she stopped, arms crossed protectively over her stomach. Fine. Talk. He stepped closer, but his movements were slow, careful, as though approaching a wounded animal. When I was younger, my life was threatened more than once. Kidnapping attempts, poisoning. You know the world I live in, Imani. It's not safe. Her brows furrowed, though anger still simmered beneath her skin. My family insisted I safeguard my future. My bloodline. They kept samples of my semen frozen in case anything ever happened to me. It wasn't my choice, but I allowed it. Her heart pounded in her ears. So what? They just decided to use it on me? Without my consent. His jaw clenched. It wasn't supposed to be you. The hospital made a mistake. I only found out after. He gestured vaguely toward her stomach. After it was too late. Imani's breath came in shallow gasps. Her mind warred with itself, one side wanting to believe him, the other screaming that everything was too coincidental, too cruel. "You should have told me," she whispered. "I was trying to protect you and I wasn't even sure it was you." His voice cracked, and that startled her more than anything. Xu Liang never cracked. But her rage wasn't done. "Protect me. By lying. By letting me think I was just some accident? All that talk about believing me, was this why?" He reached for her hand. She pulled away. In the days after his confession, her anger dulled but something else began to take root. Doubt. She replayed his words over and over. His semen. Frozen for emergencies. Not his choice. Not planned. But if that were true, then was he really impotent as everyone whispered? Her gaze flicked to him whenever he passed. His tall frame, broad shoulders, the quiet dominance he carried into every room. He didn't look like a man incapable of fathering children. And now, with her carrying his child, the whispers seemed hollow. Late one evening, as she prepared tea in the kitchen, he entered. The space felt too small with both of them inside. His presence was magnetic, suffocating. She dropped a spoon, and when he bent to pick it up, their hands brushed. Heat surged up her arm, and her breath caught. She yanked her hand back, cheeks burning. "Don't." But his eyes lingered on her face, his voice husky. "You think I'm weak. That I can't." He stopped himself, jaw tightening. The implication was enough. She turned away quickly, but her pulse betrayed her. She could feel him behind her, too close, too potent, too alive. The storm broke one night when a deal went wrong and Xu Liang returned to the estate injured, his shirt ripped, a gash along his arm. Imani had been reading to Rue when the guards brought him in. She rushed forward instinctively, snatching the first aid kit before she could think twice. "Sit down," she ordered. Xu Liang obeyed, silent, his eyes fixed on her as she knelt before him, cleaning his wound. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from awareness. His muscles flexed under her touch, his chest rising and falling in controlled breaths. This was no impotent man. This was raw, undeniable strength. When she finished bandaging him, their eyes met. For the first time, his walls lowered completely. "Imani." His voice was a plea. Her heart thudded violently. She opened her mouth to respond, and the study doors slammed open. One of Xu Liang's men staggered in, bloodied and breathless. "Master Xu, there's been a breach. They've found her." Xu Liang's head snapped up. "Who?" The guard's eyes darted to Imani, the young master's mother. Imani froze, the color draining from her face. "Mother? How? Why?" Before she could process, Xu Liang was already on his feet, his hand gripping her wrist firmly, pulling her up. "Get her out of here," he said urgently, his tone sharper than she'd ever heard. What? Get her out of here." His gaze was steel. "If she is here, it's trouble. They'll use her against me. You can't leave my side now." Imani's breath hitched, her heart caught between fear and fury, confusion and something else. And just as she opened her mouth to demand answers, the sound of glass shattering echoed through the estate. Mingyue Estate like a warning bell. Imani flinched, instinctively clutching her stomach, her body already moving before her mind could catch up. Xu Liang's grip tightened around her wrist, steady and unyielding. "Stay with me," he commanded, his voice low but edged with urgency. Guards swarmed the hallways, shouts breaking the fragile silence that had once cocooned the mansion. The usual order of the household was gone, replaced by chaos, running footsteps, and the sharp bark of commands. Imani's heart raced, each beat thundering in her ears. What's happening? Who is she? Why now? Xu Liang's jaw hardened, his dark eyes burning with calculation. Not here. Not now. He pulled her along, weaving through a side corridor that led toward the back of the estate. His movements were fluid, precise, as though he'd rehearsed escape routes 1,000 times before. Her breath hitched as another crash echoed, followed by the metallic clatter of weapons. This wasn't just an intrusion. It was an attack. Xu Liang. He stopped so abruptly she nearly stumbled into him. He turned, his hands firm on her shoulders, his face closer than it had ever been. Despite the chaos, his voice came calm, steady, the eye of the storm. "They're after me, Imani. But if they can't get me, they'll take you. Or the baby." The world tilted. Her knees weakened. She had never felt the weight of her unborn child so heavily until this moment. Not just life, but leverage. She swallowed hard. And the woman? The one they said. His eyes flickered with something she had never seen before. Fear. Real fear. Xiao Rui's mother. "She's not supposed to be here." Imani froze, confusion slamming into her like cold water. "But, isn't she gone?" "She was supposed to be gone," Xu Liang snapped, his usual composure fracturing for the briefest second. "If she's back, it means someone brought her here, and it isn't to play family reunion." Before she could press for more, a gunshot cracked in the distance. Imani's scream lodged in her throat as Xu Liang's men shouted orders. Xu Liang seized her hand again, pulling her down a narrow passage lined with carved panels. A hidden door swung open at the touch of his palm against a sensor. Behind it stretched a dimly lit tunnel. "In," he ordered. Her chest heaved. "Xu Liang, I." His gaze softened, just slightly, as he cupped her face with one calloused hand. "Trust me. I will explain everything, but first I have to keep you alive." "Where is Xiao Rui?" I asked in panic, worry rising in her chest. "He is in another safe location," he said with certainty. She didn't have time to protest. He guided her into the tunnel, the door sliding shut behind them, sealing them in darkness. For a long moment, the only sound was their uneven breathing and the muffled chaos from above. Imani pressed her back against the cold wall, clutching her stomach as fear and questions tangled inside her. Xiao Rui's mother, alive. Enemies breaching the estate. Xu Liang's hidden vulnerabilities. It was all unraveling too quickly, too violently. When Xu Liang finally spoke again, his voice was quieter, rawer. "They'll use her to tear everything apart. Me. Rui. You. The child you carry. That's what they want." Imani's lips parted, her voice barely a whisper. "Then what am I to you, Xu Liang? Another secret? Another mistake they can use?" His eyes met hers in the dim light, hard and unflinching. "No. You're the only thing I can't afford to lose." The words stole her breath, silencing the storm in her mind, if only for a heartbeat. Then, from the far end of the tunnel, came the sound of footsteps. The footsteps in the tunnel grew louder, heavier, echoing against the stone walls. Imani's breath caught in her throat. She pressed her back against the cold wall, her hand instinctively tightening over her stomach. Xu Liang moved in front of her in a protective stance, his shadow stretching tall and solid against the dim glow of the emergency lights. The figures emerged, two of his men, battered but alive. Their uniforms were scuffed, and one clutched his side where blood seeped through his shirt, but the relief in their eyes when they saw Xu Liang was unmistakable. "Sir, it's contained," one of them said, his voice rough, labored. "The intruders have retreated. Casualties on their side. We lost a few men. But the estate is secure again." Xu Liang's jaw flexed, his eyes narrowing. "And the woman?" The guard hesitated. "We found her. Alive. She's under watch." Alive. The word twisted through Imani like a knife. Xiao Rui's mother. She had so many questions she couldn't form a single one. Instead, she stayed silent, her mind swimming, her chest tight. Xu Liang gave a clipped nod and motioned for them to move. "Get her upstairs. Quietly. Keep her under guard." Then his hand brushed Imani's arm, grounding her as he murmured, "It's over for now. Come." When they emerged from the hidden tunnel into the rear wing of the estate, the mansion bore scars of the night's violence. Shattered vases littered the hallway. The smell of gunpowder lingered, mingling with the faint iron tang of blood. Men moved with urgency, securing broken doors, carrying the wounded, barking updates into radios. But beneath the chaos was a strange, steady rhythm. Order was returning. The estate, vast and unyielding, was learning to breathe again. Imani clutched Xu Liang's sleeve as they walked through the wreckage. Every corner seemed haunted by shadows of what had almost been lost. Yet life, fragile and stubborn, was pushing back. A maid emerged from hiding, tears streaking her face, and another knelt to clean shattered glass from the marble floors. The estate, like its master, refused to fall. Imani couldn't help but notice how his people looked at Xu Liang. With fear, yes, but also unshakable loyalty. Even bloodied and exhausted, they straightened when he passed, as though his very presence demanded it. Her gaze flicked to him, tall, composed, his face unreadable. But she remembered the flicker of fear she had seen when he spoke of Xiao Rui's mother. That fear had not been for himself. As the hours stretched on, those who had been hiding began to emerge. The kitchen staff, pale and shaken, returned to the ruined dining hall to salvage what they could. Guards posted themselves visibly at the gates. And then, Xiao Rui. Escorted by a trusted man, the little boy ran into the estate, his small body colliding with Imani's legs as he clung to her like a lifeline. "Auntie Imani." His voice cracked, muffled against her dress. She bent down, gathering him into her arms despite the weight in her chest. Relief flooded her at the warmth of his little body pressed against hers. "You're safe. You're safe, Xiao Rui," she whispered, stroking his hair. That night, and in the days that followed, she slipped back into her role as his nanny almost without thinking. But something was different. The bond between them grew deeper, forged in fear and the desperate relief of survival. He no longer just sought her when it was time for meals or lessons. He followed her everywhere, holding her hand, curling beside her during afternoon naps, looking to her as though she were his anchor in a world turned upside down. And Imani, despite the storm raging in her heart over Xu Liang and the secrets he held, found comfort in him too. She read him stories, taught him English lullabies, kissed the top of his head when nightmares woke him. Every time he called her name, it was as though he was reminding her she belonged here, even if nothing else made sense. Xu Liang watched them from a distance, his expression unreadable. But Imani often caught the flicker in his eyes when he saw his son nestled in her lap. Pride. Relief. Or something heavier he couldn't name. By the week's end, the estate looked deceptively normal again. Broken glass had been swept away, walls scrubbed clean, blood concealed beneath fresh polish. Dinner was served quietly, though most barely touched their plates. Imani continued her duties, caring for Xiao Rui with gentle precision. She guided him through his studies, chased him across the gardens when laughter finally returned to his lips, and sat beside him at night until his breathing evened out into sleep. The boy trusted her in ways he seemed to trust no one else, not even Xu Liang. And yet, beneath the normalcy, Imani felt the cracks widening. Xu Liang grew more secretive, more guarded. His words to her in the tunnel still echoed. "You're the only thing I can't afford to lose." But what did that mean in a house full of locked doors and half-truths? One night, after putting Xiao Rui to bed, Imani wandered the halls restlessly. She couldn't shake the unease gnawing at her chest. Drawn by faint light spilling from Xu Liang's private wing, she hesitated. He had told her before that certain doors were not to be opened. Boundaries built like stone walls. But tonight, curiosity and dread tugged her more strongly than caution. The door to his chambers was ajar. Imani froze at the threshold, her fingers hovering near the frame. The air inside carried a faint, unfamiliar fragrance, sweet, almost cloying, so unlike Xu Liang's crisp, restrained scent. She stepped inside. The room was dim, shadows cast across polished wood and silken sheets. At first, she thought the bed was empty. Then her eyes adjusted. A figure lay beneath the covers, hair spilling across the pillow. A woman's form. Imani's pulse surged. She moved closer, each step heavy, reluctant, afraid of what she already knew. The woman shifted slightly, her face turning into the faint glow of the lamp. Imani's breath hitched. Xiao Rui's mother. Sleeping soundly in Xu Liang's bed. The room spun, her knees threatening to give way. She clutched the doorframe, heart slamming against her ribs. The questions that had haunted her all day suddenly screamed in her ears, drowning everything else. And she knew, whatever peace had briefly returned to the Mingyue Estate had just been shattered all over again.